Hello, today we will discuss the order of the Passover meal, also known as the Pesach Seder. Passover was when, thousands of years ago, our parents were freed from Egyptian slavery and we became an independent nation. We celebrate this miracle every year on the anniversary of this day by treating ourselves as kings and queens at the Seder. But we also eat matzah to remind ourselves how life was like when our people were slaves in a foreign country without even bread to eat. In case anything I say here is confusing, there will be links in the description for more information. A couple of things to go over before we start the order of the Seder. The order of everything done and eaten at the Seder may not seem understandable at first, but there are hundreds of different complementary reasons of why these things are done the way they are. In fact, some of these things are done that way specifically for someone to question and receive an answer. This gets people interested in learning more about Judaism and its past, present, and future. For example, there is a question of why wine or grape juice is drunk at least 4 times throughout the Seder, and why there are such huge time intervals between them. An answer to the first part of this question is that wine represents wealth and freedom, and Hashem used 4 different expressions when He promised to free us from Egypt, and we each time drink, it's in commemoration of each of the promises. There are other deeper meanings as well, but this is the most common one. As for the second part, aside from any mystical reasons, the drinking of the wine is spaced apart so that no one gets too carried away and becomes drunk too early in the Seder and therefore is unable from completing it properly. One more thing to note is that there are parts of the Seder where the matzah and the wine or grape juice are eaten and drunk while leaning to the left side, as it was an ancient custom for royalty to eat that way, and we imitate that custom to emphasize our freedom and our new status as God's chosen nation. Okay, so the order of the Seder is as follows. The first is called Kaddish. Kaddish is when we recite Kiddush and drink the first cup of wine or grape juice while leaning leftwards. The second step is Urchatz. Urchatz is when we wash our hands right after Kiddush, and we wash it the same way we usually wash for bread, but this time we do not say a blessing. Third is karpas. Karpas, this is the Hebrew word for celery, and at this point we dip one into salt water and we eat it. We don't eat much of it though, and when saying the blessing or the bracha of ha'adamah, we also have in mind the maror or Romanian lettuce that we will eat at a later point. Next step is called yachatz. Yachatz, this is when the head of the household takes a set of 3 matzot and they're stacked on top of each other. He takes out the middle matzah, breaks it in half. The smaller piece, with the now broken matzah, gets put back in, but the larger piece is now called the afikomen. The afikomen is put away to be eaten at the end of the Seder. Some have the tradition to hide it away for children to find it later as a fun activity to keep the children awake. Actually, one of the not most widely known aspects of Passover is that it is primarily meant for the children. It's meant to be a teaching experience, and therefore the young children are the VIPs at these nights. Next is Magid. Magid is, during this time in the Seder, the exodus from Egypt is recounted for us to recall the miracle that Hashem did for us, and that He still does miracles for us, even though they're not as obvious now. And one miracle is that us being the oldest and most influential nation in the world. We drink the second cup of wine at this point. Next is Rachza. Now at this point, we all get up to wash our hands to eat matzah in the way that we usually wash our hands to eat bread on any other day. And we do recite a blessing at this time. Next is Motzi Matzah. So at this point, the head of the household picks up the set of the matzah from before and recites the bracha of Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz over them, as well as the blessing of Al Achilat Matzah. The matzah should then be eaten while leaning to the left side. Next is maror. This word comes from the Hebrew word mar. Mar meaning bitter. And so eat the Romanian lettuce, the bitter Romanian lettuce, to recall the bitterness of the Egyptian exile. After that is called korech. Korech is when we combine the remaining maror with the matzah as a sandwich, and we eat that. Korech literally means wrapping. Now this is the most favorite part, Shulchan Orech. Shulchan Orech is when we eat the meal. We have the custom of eating a hard-boiled egg as well to symbolize that mourning. On a deeper level, eggs represent endurance. For example, most foods, they become softer when cooked, but eggs actually become harder when boiled. This also represents what happened to Jews in Egypt. They became stronger because of their suffering, and it was a catalyst for spiritual growth and acceptance as God's chosen nation. After the meal, the next step is called tzafun. After finishing the meal, we eat the afikomen mentioned earlier, and this is actually the last thing that we're supposed to eat that night, except for the remaining 2 cups of wine or grape juice and water. Then it's barech. Now, at the conclusion of the meal and eating the afikomen, we say Birkat Hamazon, as we do after eating bread any other day of the year. We drink the 3rd cup immediately afterwards. Now, Hallel is said. Hallel means praise, and we recite 5 minutes worth of songs of praise to Hashem as a thank you, and we drink the final cup right after that. Now, lastly, Nerza, the last point, this is when we express our hope and faith in that final redemption when Mashiach comes, and to be able to celebrate Passover next year in Israel with the Bet HaMikdash, with Hashem close to us, and His presence felt, and maybe this year. Now, there are many books that concisely explain and illustrate all the different aspects and sequences of the Passover Seder in many languages. One such book is called the Sephardic Haggadah Shel Pesach. This book exists in English, Russian, and Hebrew, and it contains all the translations, explanations, and illustrations needed to perform the Seder properly and as accurately as possible. This book was released recently and is greatly recommended for those who wish to learn more about Passover and its role for the Jewish people. Thank you for listening to this relatively long video, and I wish all of you to have a blessed day.